I'm super stoked to have our next guest on Coach's Corner. A super dad, a motorcycle enthusiast, a former colleague of mine, and the CEO at Alley, Gabe Lulo. Gabe, how's it going today?
I am great because I'm here, Brian. I'm a huge fan, as you know. Love our friendship and love what you've been doing. And I love this podcast. I'm a huge fan of that as well. So thanks for having me.
The words mean a lot, man. I know you are on the podcast tour route. I love seeing you literally everywhere. And maybe to kick us off, man, let's jump right into it. Want to share a little bit about your background and then obviously your company, Alley?
Yeah. So out of college, I started in the recruiting game. So I was in executive recruitment, staffing, and did that in my own business for 10 years. Came to this company. I'm not a founder, even though I'm the CEO. I actually just took that role over just over a year ago. Came to Alley really kind of to get into the tech SaaS inside sales space. I was always face to face selling, traveling a lot. And, I had a daughter at that moment. So I was looking, hey, I want to be more in a remote world, right? And so found Alley, came on as people operations director and is in charge of recruiting people, training people, managing the team. And I did leave actually on good terms to go run two software companies. And that was exciting and learned a lot, but it was asked to come back. The founder wanted to move into retirement mode and asked to come back as CEO. And that happened just about 2 years ago. And so that's a little bit about my story.
And I love that. And I love the topic that we're about to dive into.
Yeah,
How to stand out in the sea of noise that is outbound.
for
To kind
sure.
of frame it up, Gabe's perspective is really unique in my opinion. It's also one of the most valuable if you're seeking to learn because he has a lens into hundreds of companies, strategies, and go-to-market motions. His perspective on the market is just different from what us as people that work for a regular company can see into. So I really value, any kind of leader that comes from the outbound, outsourced sales development world because they just see stuff that we can't. So Gabe, I'm really excited to pick your brain today and hopefully drop some knowledge for
Yeah.
our listeners. Um, let's jump in, man. Multi-channel outbound is table stakes now, but every
Yep.
team that I talk to really has a go-to channel, and it's normally based on the leader's preference. So so we're not going to pretend, but let's pretend you're coaching a team, and phone, email, and LinkedIn are your three players. You get to start one, you get to bench one, and you got to cut one. What are you doing?
It's interesting. The timing of this podcast being recorded obviously is important because 2, 3, 4 years ago, I think the answers would be different, right? And it's unique because in Alley, I was on the phone with three CEOs today. One was with Peloton selling high-end equipment for $1 billion brand. One was a startup company with a Shark Tank. He was on Shark Tank and he's the founder-led sales selling cool equipment to basketball courts. And then another guy is a SaaS CEO selling to real estate agents software technology. So all of those verticals are extremely different, and everything in an outbound motion would be obviously custom built in what we do. But at the end of the day, I would prioritize it quickly as phone is king. Then I would actually say now LinkedIn has moved into the second spot, taking over email. And I would cut email. I think email is almost to the close of extinction at this point. It's really a great tool, but I think it's a great tool to augment or co-pilot, if you will, the first two that I just mentioned.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And yeah, that is such a wild, diverse array of people that you spoke to, just kind of italicizing why I was pumped to kind of listen to you. So the phone, right? I'm a big start with why kind of guy. Why is the phone your preference in what you label king of outbound channels?
Well, I just look at the numbers. I mean, last year we made 7 million phone calls as a company. Now, that's not the only thing we did. We used all the other channels too. But when it comes to phone calls, that's a really good number to look at the data. So if it wasn't the data that said it, I wouldn't be doing it. We make all data driven decisions. So it's a simple answer. Like the reason why we use the phone is because it works. Now, is it hard? Yes. You have to have really good reps trained by coaches like yourself, 100%. Do you need to invest in an amazing recruiting arm to find people who could not only do the phone, but be willing to do the phone? Not everyone likes to make cold calls. Yes, 100%. But if phone is done right with all of those things and a few more, it is very, very effective. It's the fastest way to get someone from, I have no idea who you are, to willing to evaluate your product than anything else. So if you want it for speed to lead scenarios, phone is good.
Yeah, literally right now we can pick this thing up, call somebody, and if they answer, right, they can go from zero awareness to our brand to spending 30 minutes with us learning more. And I think like phones always gotten a bad rap because of the, not to date us, but the old telemarketing days and the old just people
Sure.
getting pounded over the phone with these terrible calls that are just a waste of time. And when you do it the right way, like you said, and coach reps how to have a really good conversation with an executive, it's a totally different experience.
Well, here's how we look at it. A lot of people have adjusted since, tools and automation tools and email came out since like Marketo invention, right? 10 years ago. When you look at it now, a lot of people say, yeah, send me an email. And they look at the email sequence and the cadence as a start of the sales journey, right? And like there's a soft email and then they move into it and then they go deeper into it. Then there's case studies and then there's a breakup email. So they look at the entire email as this like journey. Well, I think you should look at the phone calls as the same way. The reason why people don't like cold calling on the other side of it is because these cold callers come in and pitch them so heavily and they're so aggressive and they're so like boiler room Wolf of Wall Street style. And it's just, it really is pushy, right? And you don't want to do that. But imagine this, think about it differently. What if you call someone up and say, hey, listen, I know I'm catching the middle of your day and I'm not asking you to do anything. Actually, would it be okay if I just sent you an email? And just to tell you a little bit about who we are and what we do, I have your email address. Is that, would you be open to that? And then I can follow up. Again, very soft, but I guarantee you, if you do it that way, one, you know their email address. Two, they're definitely going to read it. And three, when you follow up, now you can get deeper into the aggressive way, if you will, or the value prop, and you're going to get better results. So I say start your cadences with a phone call and then go into it from that way versus what most people say is start with an email.
I think it's a thoughtful way to. I
Yep.
think when I hear about personalization and relevance, what all that really means is thoughtfulness, right? I want
Right.
thoughtful outreach. And I think, 5 years ago, the point of a cold call was to book a meeting. I think today you shouldn't be calling to book a meeting. You should be calling to learn more about the person you're dialing and hopefully give them more awareness about you. And if a meeting makes sense, fire it up. But do you agree there?
Not, I I agree so much. It's crazy because really, if you think about it, only 3 to 5% of the market right now is interested in buying. It's a very small amount. So that's really the market that is interested in taking a meeting today. So not only does it have to be thoughtful as an SDR, but to figure out timing is just super important. So if you can gauge the timing of interest and the timing of willingness to evaluate, you're opening up that 3 to 5% to probably 25 to 30% now. And then now you're back into a number that makes sense from a return on investment standpoint for SDRs. So the meeting should not be the North Star. Now, are we going to book meetings? Yeah, of course. That's like awesome, amazing. We all want that. But it's not the end all be all when it comes to the SDR function. It's about creating pipeline. Same job as an AE, but there is a pipeline when it comes to before they sign and the prospecting pipeline. So if you treat the prospecting pipeline like you normally would treat a deal pipeline, then you are on the right track.
I had a feeling we were going to go down this hole based on one of your posts from a few days ago. Like the prospecting pipeline to me is something that, you know, high level sales development orgs and just top of funnel, lead gen orgs do. Like because you're talking to that person and you now understand their timeline and what they're focused on and strategic initiatives, tying this back to sticking out from the noise. The next time you call them, hey, Gabe, we spoke 6 months ago. You told me about this huge initiative you had. You mentioned that budgeting season is around now and you only evaluate tools from August to September. You were kind enough to invite me to reach back out and bang, right? You are
Well,
sticking out from the noise because it's not a cold pitch. Like, I was like, oh, yeah, I did talk to that guy. He did his research. He remembers our conversation and he or she is right. So I love that you called that out.
yeah, I mean, you got to look at it from a marketing perspective. That's why, like, a lot of our point of contacts now here at our company are CMOs versus the CSO or the CRO more than before. And the reason why is because they really understand that, it is a true marketing function. It's a defined word, conversational marketing. Like that's what a sales development role really is conversational marketing. Now, Does it make sense to spend money on billboards? Does it make sense to spend money on ads? Like that's a really expensive way for brand awareness. I think that is a significantly bigger expense than an SDR team if you're expecting the things that I just mentioned. I think, CFOs right now are expecting meetings, 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 meetings. And yes, again, very important, but you're segmenting down the entire marketplace to 3% and you're missing out on the entire pipeline that you should be looking at.
Yeah, that's spot on. Let's kind of stay there, but pivot into the multi-channeled approach that you would cut. I
Yeah.
think you can have a hyper-personalized, hyper-relevant, thoughtful message, right? But the chances in today's world of your prospects seeing that message in an inbox are slim, just based on how pounded these executives are getting with spam after spam after spam type email. Not to mention the spam filters, that exist in a lot of their emailing inbox technologies. Like, if you can't get a hold of someone on the phone, what are some good ideas to stand out from the noise when it comes to email or maybe some LinkedIn text driven outreach?
Yeah. I want to answer that, but I also want to look at it from a different perspective. I think right now everyone's looking at the three channels and they're forgetting other channels are now coming online and are actually very much here. And it doesn't change that they're still within those markets of channels, but it also is a different way of looking at it. We're a huge fan of Loom videos. We're a huge fan of creating GIFs. We're a huge fan of voice notes. And if you want to look at it, those are three true channels, if you will, of communication, right? A channel to me is everything to communicate. Even smoke signals can be considered a channel, right? But right now we're utilizing voice note and Loom videos dramatically because it humanizes the entire thing. And when we talk about cutting through the noise, there's nothing better right now to use technology wise to cut through the noise. I'd like to send, if I'm reaching out to you, a voice note in my LinkedIn, which you can natively do very quickly, and it just stands out, and I put like a little emoji finger right next to the play button. So in a smiley face, and it gets the people to want to push that button. And what I like about that, it really forces people to want to hear what is that voice note all about. I can't see it. I can't read it. I need to hear it. And then it's custom and it's personal and they're talking to you. You can't, automate that. It's very hyper personalized. And I think that's a way to really cut through the noise as well. And I really am enjoying LinkedIn for that reason. And again, same thing with Loom videos. When I get prospected and I get interest, I'm not going to say yes to the meeting. I'm going to say, listen, can you send me a 2-minute Loom video on exactly why you're different than, and I give them a company, why you're different than this specific company, because that's what I'm using now. And if they do that, I'm going to take the meeting 100% of the time, unless it's horrible video. But if they do it, it's probably going to turn into a meeting. Here's what's interesting. 99% of the people who I respond to with that don't do it. And so I think that's what's important.
Man, I think there's two things there. Taking it in reverse, I'm amazed at how many times I do respond with a very short, hey, send me a little bit more, right? Very,
Yep.
very similar to what you did. And it's crickets. I'm like,
Yep.
what? Oh my goodness. Like
Right.
if I was in their seat and I got to reply, I'm telling my girlfriend, give me 5 minutes, I got to respond. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so that part, it is mind blowing because I think it's not the rep's fault. They're just not coached and trained the right way on how to
And that's
handle
it.
that. Yeah.
Exactly. In our old offices, I think we had this sign that said, you know what I mean, speed the lead, right? Yeah, so it's always about, he or she who gets to that conversation first wins. And so it's all about timing when it comes to the prospecting side of it, when it comes to, responding and being hyper responsive. So just the fact that my team responds to our inbound leads so quickly, that wins the deal in most cases. Just because they see, wow, if you treat me, right, like you're going to treat my leads, my prospects, damn, I want to work with you guys. And so that's the attitude you have to bring. So kudos to your girlfriend for letting you do that. My wife does the same
Yeah.
thing.
It doesn't always end well, but no. The speed that leads a good call, man. I think it's such a common metric in inbound and call centers, but outbound, it matters, right? When that person replies to your outbound message, getting back to them in a timely way
Right.
totally matters. The other thing you said prior to that is, how to stick out, bringing us back to the title. Voice notes are one of my new favorite things to do. And I think when I see a block of text and a LinkedIn message, and I don't recognize that person's name, I very rarely read it. Almost never, because I know what it is. If it's a
Yeah.
massive block, and it always is, right? Very
Oh,
rarely
four
am I getting,
paragraph with a calendar
yeah,
link. Hi, first message. Yeah, I get them.
it, it's so much. But, psychologically, one, I've already, like, it's not a pattern interrupt. I've already put that into a bucket of this is not great outbound. But then to the latter, the voice note is like you said, like, what is this? Like,
Yep.
I want to press play because I want to hear, like, I'm just curious. Like, I'm
Yeah.
extremely curious. It's hard to not peek behind the curtain, per se.
Yeah, I mean, when we were kids, right? There's like, hey, remember, don't touch the red button. Like, don't touch the red button. I don't know if it's a game show or something. Like, of course you're gonna do it. Like, you were told not to. Like, you have to do it. So it's just that curiosity of, and it show, and you can't do more than a minute, which is really cool, right? Because like, okay, if I hit play on this, they got me for a minute. So I got to see,
Yeah.
okay, what can I say to them in a minute, literally, that would catch their attention? And I know they're going to hit play. And if you can resonate, again, it's super personal. You can't do it at scale, but that's the whole point of this is, being human and connecting and standing out between the noise, because the noise is all automation. So if you really want to stand out and everything's automation, don't be automated.
Yeah, it's a very, like, dissonantial idea you hear in the market right now. Like, you have this whole wave of AI, but in the same token, everybody is still talking about the human approach. One thing we're trying to do over here is we call it human intelligence, and really combining the two in the right way. When you're
Sure.
just using one with no human, guess what's going to happen? Spam
Right.
filter inbox, no one's picking up your calls. It's sad, but let's stay there. A question I had for you, because you see a lot of it, you manage a lot of it. What are some of those big mistakes people make when outbounding that hurts their chances of being seen outside of 4 paragraphs of text?
Well, I think, not to switch it, but I answer your question. I think right now content really is dramatic, right? So like we're on this creating content right now. We're all, you're running a massive sales org, I'm running a company over here. Like, why are we even doing this? Because it's not just for our brands and our clients' brands, but it's also for our team, right? So our SDRs are able to capture the content that I'm creating for the company to leverage it into conversations for themselves. So I think it's twofold. I think leaders have to be providing content and enabling their SDRs to go to market. And I think one of the big failures that I see with clients coming to us to do their outbound is that they're not willing to also invest in things that support that outbound. And so you look at outbound as this mathematical equation of prospecting, but there is enablement that is involved with your product and so many others that are, able to enable salespeople, is I think what companies really have to look at and invest in.
I think content, it really builds trust. So, like, the lack
100%.
thereof it eliminates trust. I remember I was being outbounded by a Zoom Info Cognizant Apollo competitor, and I'd never heard of them. The rep was so good. He was unbelievable. I had such an amazing cold call. He had amazing follow up. He put me in his pipeline and called me back when I was evaluating tech. We get on the call and he demos it. I'm like, damn, I've never heard of this brand, but everything I've experienced so far is great. And I went to try to find their website. I couldn't. And I asked him to help, like, I need you to send me these 3 things, and he couldn't. And, no fault to his, but there was really nothing for me to latch on to, because he had proven everything that I needed to accept the trust. I couldn't agree with you more about content. I think we're in a fun area right now. What are some of the myths? So that's a mistake. Not having content's a mistake, but what are some of the myths that you see on LinkedIn that you're calling bullshit on? Like, what are some of the things people are telling you to do that you're like, that's crap. Don't do that.
Right. Well, not to rehash, but everyone is saying phone is dead, right? Everyone's saying AI is replacing SDRs. There's nuances there for sure, but I think those are the two, I would say, clickbait phrases that are being used right now on LinkedIn in the go-to-market world. When it comes to phone, right? Is phone dead? No. As I was mentioning before, like people who are bad at it, sure, like you probably shouldn't cold call. Or if you're only making 30 or 40 cold calls and you're an SDR per day, yeah, cold calling is dead for you. You have to use tools to make sure that you're having the connection rates at a level that makes sense from a return on investment standpoint. And on the flip side, is AI replacing SDRs? My response is the bad ones. I mean, there's literally SDRs right now that all they do is put people into email sequences. That's all they do. That's it. And so can AI take that over? For sure, you're done. But are they going to replace the human connection of selling? No, it's pushing the SDR down the sales funnel. That's all it is. But our SDRs are the best SDRs we've ever employed because they need to be seasoned. They need to be more of a product expert. They need to be more of a leader in sales. And they're pushing that down towards almost into the AE role, but not doing the sale themselves. And that's where the SDR really needs to live right now. And it's not a role that's going away anytime soon, no matter what anyone says AI can do these days. Those are the myths.
Yeah, that to me was one that I think it changes, and the outbound changes because so many people have done it bad, right? And
Yeah.
that's where you're hearing these loud voices say that it's over. And I'd be the first to, I'd be lying if I didn't say our team over here changed a little bit too. But I think like doing it bad now, you don't have a chance.
No.
I think a myth that I hear a lot of, and I'm actually really excited to hear what you think about this, is anytime I hear someone talk about quality and quantity, there's this like false narrative of like you can't have quality if you're doing quantity, and if you're doing quantity, there's no way to have quality. And I think that's a crock of shit. Like
Yeah.
I know your reps make 250 dials a day. Like tell the audience what a quantity and quality approach looks like when you have both. Like, what does that actually
Yeah.
look like?
Well, you read my mind. I mean, this is why I love talking to you because we're so much on the same page. And I promise you to the audience, this was not planned, these answers. We did not talk about this prior to this call. It feels like, yeah, dude, they're just both agreed with each other the whole time. No, this is just why we think this way. It's funny. My wife says something all the time in our family. She says two things can be true, right? So I think it's more like when we're arguing or something, right? And I'm like, oh, actually, that makes sense. Like it's not your way or my way. It's two things can be true, right? You can have quality and you can have quantity, and they both can resonate with each other, right? You don't have to pick one. And so, yeah, we make $250 a day per rep, but we use technology to do that. Like we're not shy about that. They're not click to dialing HubSpot instances or copying numbers from Excel spreadsheets like I used to do when I was cold calling in college, right? The reality is like we are using tech to enable our reps to have more conversations, but that doesn't mean we're calling bad data or lists that aren't architected correctly or high quality, high targeted personas that we're very much laser focused to go after. Like we are still doing that too. So we are going after quality, but we're also doing it at scale. And that's all that we preach and do. But at the end of the day, I think a lot of people say, well, you have to spray and pray or you have to call one at a time, 10 people a day. You don't have to pick either side. Two things can be true.
Yeah, amen to that. We're coming up on time, Gabe. If
Oh
you had
boy,
one
that was
piece of it,
fast.
that
When
was
you're having
fast.
fun, it goes fast.
If our goal is to keep these under 15, I think we could talk for 2 hours. But
Now let's keep it short. I love it.
if you had one piece of advice to stand out from the noise for the audience, what would you tell them?
Listen to you, get coached, get trained, have a coach, have a mentor, get better. If you're an AE, you got to get better right now. If you're an SDR, you got to get better right now. We're not living in the world in SaaS where everything's low hanging fruit like it used to be a few years ago. It's harder. So what do you do when things get harder? You get better. That's the answer. You don't quit. You don't change careers. There's a lot of money to be made. My mentor says after recession comes expansion. After expansion comes recession. It's just part of the game. So what do you do when during those challenging times is get better. And I think there's no better time and no better amount of resources out there for free to learn from the people who know what they're doing.
Awesome. Gabe, thank you so much.
Thanks, buddy.